Hey there, growth seekers. Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Growing Forward podcast, where we talk all about personal growth, fulfillment, and unlocking your true potential. I'm your host, Jonathan.
And I'm Janelle. We're so excited to have you with us today. This podcast is all about helping you take those small but meaningful steps toward becoming the best version of yourself. And today, Jonathan, we've got such a transformative topic to dive into, don't we?
Absolutely, Janelle. Today, we're talking about overcoming limiting beliefs. You know, those sneaky little thoughts that whisper in your ear. You can't do that, or you're not good enough. We all have them. But here's the good news. We don't have to let them hold us back.
That's right. Limiting beliefs can be like invisible walls that stop us from reaching our full potential. But here on Growing Forward, we're all about breaking those walls down and creating new possibilities for ourselves. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's unpack this together.
Today, we're going to explore what limiting beliefs are, where they come from, and most importantly, how to challenge and replace them with empowering ones. We'll also share some real-life examples, actionable tips, and maybe even a personal story or two.
Sounds amazing. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to be part of this conversation. Drop a comment or send us a message sharing one limiting belief you've struggled with and how you've worked to overcome it. Who knows? Your story could inspire someone else.
And remember, if this episode resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. It really helps us reach more people who are ready to grow forward with us.
Okay, Jonathan, let's kick things off.
We've got 3 sources to pull from. One's a deep dive into the psychology, where these beliefs come from, and how therapists help people work through them. Another one looks at the neuroscience, how these beliefs actually impact our brains.
Oh, wow.
And lastly, we found this really practical website article with a 7-step plan based on brain science to help break free.
A 7-step plan to break free from self-limiting beliefs.
Exactly.
That's great. I mean, we often think of them as just, bad vibes, but if we understand the psychology and the neurology, we get actual tools to change things.
Totally. So first things first.
Yeah.
What are self-limiting beliefs?
Okay, so it's not that you lack ability, right? It's more like you've got this invisible wall in your mind, built up over time.
A wall made of what?
Of all the things you've told yourself, things you believe about yourself. And those are your self-limiting beliefs. They're what keeps you from reaching your full potential.
One source calls them assumptions, like assumptions we make about ourselves or the world around us that hold us back. And get this, they're not facts.
Right.
They're these thought patterns, things we've learned over time that become so ingrained, they actually get hardwired into our brains.
And that's where approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT come in. It's designed to identify and change those negative patterns.
Okay, so if they're learned, where did they come from in the first place?
Well, all 3 sources point to childhood as a big factor. It makes sense though, right? Those early messages, the things we hear about ourselves from our parents, teachers, society, it shapes our view of ourselves.
For sure. One article gave an example about a kid who's always told they're not smart.
Oh, I hate that.
Me too.
Yeah.
And that seemingly small thing can become a lifelong belief, like, I'm not capable of academic success.
Wow. It's crazy how those early messages can stick with us. And it's not just parents either, right? Or think about friends, the media, even just the general pressures of society. All those things play a role.
It's like we're constantly absorbing these messages without even realizing it. But here's the question I've always wondered. If they hold us back and make us feel bad, why do we cling to them?
Well, that's a really good question. A lot of psychologists see this as a defense mechanism. Our minds create these beliefs as a way to protect ourselves.
Protect us from what?
Well, from potential disappointment or failure.
So it's like we're building a wall to protect ourselves, but then we end up trapped inside.
Yeah, kind of like that. One source even mentions something called fear of success, which sounds counterintuitive, I know. But the idea is that change can be scary for some people, even positive change. And so sometimes we hold ourselves back to avoid that uncertainty.
Fear of the unknown.
Right.
So we've got that fear factor, but then we also have our brains actually wired to reinforce these negative patterns too.
Yeah, that's right. It's not just in our heads, figuratively, it's affecting the actual wiring of our brains. These beliefs, they create neural pathways. And the more we think those thoughts, the stronger those pathways get.
So it's like a physical thing, an actual physical thing in our brain.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we start talking about solutions, we have to talk about impact. Right. We've talked about how self-limiting beliefs hold us back, but how do they actually do that? What did that look like in our lives?
They affect us in so many ways. From how motivated we are, how we make decisions, to our self esteem, our relationships. One article mentioned how they can lead to missed opportunities because we don't think we're good enough.
It's like we don't even let ourselves try.
Or we're so afraid of failing that we don't take risks. And that can lead to, a career that's not fulfilling or relationships that don't grow.
So basically, we end up playing small because we believe we are small.
Exactly. And then you have this thing called the self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we believe these negative things about ourselves, the more likely we are to act in ways that confirm those beliefs, which just makes them even stronger.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is. But the good news is that our sources also offer hope. We can fight back against these beliefs. We're not stuck.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. We're not just at the mercy of our minds. Neuroscience especially has given us some amazing tools to rewire those negative pathways and build new positive ones.
So it's less about being trapped in a cage and more like we can give our brains a makeover.
I like that. Think of it as reclaiming your mental landscape.
I'm into it.
Yeah, creating a foundation for growth and success.
So speaking of foundations, one of our sources, the website on neuroscience, it had this incredibly practical 7-step plan. You ready to dive in?
Absolutely. I'm really curious to see how they incorporate neuroplasticity into it.
Oh, great point. That's actually step 1. Basically means our brains can change. New experiences, new things we learn, new ways of thinking, all of that creates new pathways in the brain.
It's a key concept in so much of modern therapy now. It gives us real hope that even really ingrained patterns can be changed.
Step 2 is all about challenging those negative thoughts. It's called cognitive restructuring.
Okay.
The idea is to ask yourself, is there evidence for this belief? Or is it just based on feelings or assumptions?
It's about learning to observe your thoughts instead of blindly accepting them.
Right, like don't just believe everything you think.
Right. Don't take the negative stories at face value, put them to the test.
Then there's step 3, visualization.
Oh, I love visualization.
Our brains are pretty amazing. I don't always know the difference between what's real and what we imagine. So visualizing ourselves succeeding can actually help us prepare for success in real life.
It's like a mental rehearsal.
Exactly. Then step 4 gets into the feelings. It's called emotional intelligence. And it's about being aware of our emotions and how they influence our thinking.
Because sometimes those negative beliefs are tied to things like fear or anxiety, right?
Yeah, or even past hurt.
Exactly. Emotional intelligence gives us a way to, manage those emotions so they don't control us.
Step 5 is functional imagery training, or FIT. And it focuses on connecting with our core values and then envisioning those best possible outcomes. It's like visualization, but supercharged by what matters most to us.
So it's not just any outcome, it's the one that's aligned with, who we are at our core.
Exactly. Next up is neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. This one's about changing the way we talk to ourselves, using more positive and empowering language.
The idea behind NLP is that the language we use doesn't just communicate, it shapes our thoughts and beliefs too.
Right. And finally, we've got step 7, neural rewiring. This is where we form new positive habits and repeat them until they become our new normal. We're literally reshaping our brains.
It's about making those positive thoughts our default setting.
Exactly. But one of the psychology articles brought up another layer to this too. It's called schema therapy, and it focuses on these deeply ingrained beliefs we develop about ourselves and about the world.
Yeah.
And we usually develop them in childhood. They're called schemas. So it's like we've been looking at individual apps that are causing problems, right? But schema therapy helps us address the faulty operating system running them all.
Ooh, that's a good analogy. And schema therapy is definitely a longer-term approach.
Right.
But it can lead to some profound change because it addresses those core beliefs, the beliefs that shape so much of our thinking.
This is all so fascinating. But I'm also realizing we've covered a lot already, and we're just getting started.
There's so much to unpack. It's a complex topic, but it's really fascinating. It really is fascinating. There's just so much research now about how our brains work and how we can change the way we think.
Totally. All right, so before we move on, let's do a super quick recap for everyone listening. We're talking about self-limiting beliefs and how they can hold us back. We covered where these beliefs come from, often rooted in childhood.
Right.
And how they can become wired into our brains. But the good news is our brains can change.
Yes. And we were just talking about schema therapy. which helps us address those really deep core beliefs, the ones called schemas. They drive so many of those negative thought patterns.
So if someone's listening and thinking, okay, this is me, I need to do some deeper work, schema therapy might be a path to explore.
Yeah, potentially. Think of it this way. If CBT is like decluttering your mental closet, schema therapy is like renovating the entire house. It's more in depth, but it can help fix those foundational cracks.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've talked about the what, the why.
Yeah.
We've even touched on the how of overcoming these self-limiting beliefs. But what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest thing is to remember this. Self-limiting beliefs are not facts. They're learned patterns of thinking, often based on distorted perceptions, or things people told us when we were younger. And because they're learned, they can be unlearned.
That's so empowering. Like, we're not doomed to live in that invisible cage forever.
Exactly.
And I love how all three sources emphasize that it's never too late to start challenging these beliefs and rewriting them.
It's not a quick fix. It's a process. But with the right tools, the right techniques, we can rewire our brains for success.
Speaking of tools, I want to circle back to that 7-step plan from the neuroscience website. It's so packed with practical advice, it's worth a second look.
Definitely. What I love about it is that they combine cutting-edge research with strategies anyone can use.
Absolutely. So, quick recap. First, we have neuroplasticity, the ability of our brains to change and adapt.
It's like our brains are constantly remodeling themselves based on our experiences, on what we learn.
Exactly. And that's what makes change possible, right?
Yeah.
You're not stuck with the brain wiring we were born with. We can actually reshape it. Then there's cognitive restructuring, which is challenging those negative thoughts and reframing them.
Right, it's like being a thought detective. When you have a negative thought, you don't just accept it. You investigate it. You ask, what's the evidence for this thought? Is it even true? And then you start looking for more balanced explanations, more helpful ones.
Then we have visualization.
Yeah.
Is where we use our imagination to create these mental pictures of success.
Our brains can't always tell the difference between what's real and what we vividly imagine.
Wow.
So when we visualize ourselves succeeding, we're actually creating those neural pathways that support that success.
Next up is emotional intelligence,
Right?
which is about managing our emotions so they don't control us.
So we can recognize when fear or anxiety or past hurt is fueling those negative beliefs. And we learn to, just observe those emotions, acknowledge them, and then choose how we respond.
Step 5 is functional imagery training, or FIT. And it connects those visualizations with our core values. It's visualization, but with purpose.
It's not just any random outcome. It's the outcome that aligns with what truly matters to us.
Exactly. Then we've got neurolinguistic programming, or NLP.
Oh, yeah.
Which is how language shapes our thoughts.
It can help us identify and then change the language patterns that reinforce those negative beliefs, and then replace them with more empowering language that supports growth.
And lastly, neural rewiring, which is where we take action, right? We create those new positive habits.
We repeat them, we make them automatic, and in doing that, we're literally changing the structure of our brains.
It's amazing. But I think sometimes there's a gap between understanding this stuff and actually doing it.
You're right. Knowing about these tools and actually using them are two different things.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired and ready to take action, what's a good place to start?
I'd say start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire belief system at once, Pick one belief you want to challenge and 1 or 2 techniques from the 7-step plan, the ones that resonate with you.
So don't try to do everything at once.
Exactly. Small changes done consistently, they can lead to big results. Celebrate the wins along the way. And remember, progress isn't always linear,
Right.
There will be setbacks, there will be moments of doubt, but just keep practicing, keep learning, keep believing in your ability to grow.
Keep believing in your ability to grow. I love that. It's a good reminder that we're all works in progress. And with the right tools and the right mindset, we really can achieve anything.
One of the sources had this quote, "It's never too late to rewrite your beliefs to be more empowering, thereby clearing a path toward the achievement of your greatest goals."
That is such a great quote.
It really captures that sense of hope and possibility.
It does. No matter where we are in our journey, it's never too late to create a more empowered, more fulfilling life.
Absolutely. So, as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, what are some things our listeners should keep in mind as they start applying these ideas, Any pitfalls they should watch out for?
Great question.
I think one pitfall is getting discouraged when things get tough. when you hit those bumps in the road.
It happens.
It happens. But it's important to remember that changing deep-seated beliefs, it takes time, it takes effort. It's not a quick fix, it's a journey.
So be patient.
Be patient, don't expect overnight results.
And also, don't try to do too much at once.
Right. Remember we talked about starting small. Pick one belief, one or two techniques, and focus on those.
Don't be afraid to experiment either.
Absolutely. What works for one person might not work for another, so try different things, see what resonates with you, and be consistent.
Consistency is key. This has been such an interesting conversation. We've explored so much: the science, the techniques, the deeper beliefs driving those negative patterns.
Yeah,
It's amazing how much there is to learn about these self-limiting beliefs,
right.
where they come from, how they work, and most importantly, how to overcome them.
It's like we've been uncovering all these hidden patterns, the ones that have been running in the background of our minds without us even knowing it.
And now that we see them, now that they're out in the open, we can start to change them. One of the biggest things I've realized is just how much power we have over our thoughts.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not about being positive all the time. It's more about recognizing that we have a choice.
We get to decide which thoughts to focus on, which ones to let go of.
We talked a lot about fear too, right? The fear that's often behind these beliefs.
Yeah.
Fear of failure, fear of success, even fear of the unknown.
I think acknowledging that fear is a big step, It's like, instead of letting fear be in the driver's seat, we can take the wheel ourselves.
That's a good analogy. And that's where those practical techniques come in. Instead of asking, why me? We can ask, why not me?
Right. It's about flipping the script.
Focusing on what we can do instead of what we think we can't. So we've got the knowledge, the tools, the motivation.
Mm.
But what happens when those old beliefs come back? Because they will, right?
Oh, they absolutely will.
It's like learning any new skill. There will be times when we mess up, but we don't have to let those setbacks define us.
We can see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
It's not about never having negative thoughts again. It's about being more resilient, about having the tools to handle them when they come up.
It's like building mental muscles, right?
Mental muscles.
The more we practice, the stronger we get.
It's really encouraging to hear that it's a process. We don't have to be perfect right away.
Definitely not. It's all about progress.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some final words of wisdom for everyone listening? What's the one thing you want them to remember?
Don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect time to start working on this stuff. Start today. Choose one small step you can take, one thing, to challenge a limiting belief and move towards your goals. Because momentum builds on itself. Even small actions can lead to big change.
Small actions, big change. Great advice.
Believe in yourself. You are capable of so much more than you think.
And that's it for today's deep dive on self-limiting beliefs. We hope you've learned some new things and found some helpful tools to unlock your potential. Remember, knowledge is power, and now you have the power to create the life you want.